After 21 years of marriage, my wife said, "He's the biggest regret of my life," in front of her entire family. My daughter burst out laughing. I stood up and said one sentence that left them all frozen. Sup, Reddit. Grab some snacks and strap in because this one is going to mess with your head. I'm Isaac, 45 male. I was hosting Thanksgiving dinner at my house. 23 people crammed around tables we'd pushed together, plates loaded with turkey, and all the fixings I'd spent 2 days preparing. The smell of smoked meat and gravy filling every corner. Football on in the other room. Kids running around. The whole Norman Rockwell fantasy, except the woman sitting across from me, had apparently decided tonight was the night to burn it all down. Corinne stood up to give her annual gratitude speech. This was her tradition, something she'd started years ago where everyone shared their biggest lesson of the year. Usually it was harmless stuff. Gratitude for health, appreciation for family. She raised her glass, scanned the room like she was about to deliver a TED Talk, and looked directly at me. My biggest lesson this year? Don't marry a man like my husband. He's honestly one of my greatest regrets. The room went dead silent for about 3 seconds. Then laughter. Her sister practically choked on her cranberry sauce. Her parents were grinning like she'd just delivered the punchline of the century. And my own daughters. My 19-year-old Hannah was cackling like a hyena, slapping the table. Even my 16-year-old Ellie let out a nervous laugh before catching my eye and looking away, her face immediately shifting to panic. I sat there feeling something crack inside me. Not embarrassment, something deeper. Something that had been strained for months finally gave way completely. I looked at Corinne, looked at the room full of people who thought my humiliation was entertainment. Then I stood up, set my napkin on my plate, and said one sentence. Congrats, you don't have a husband anymore. Nobody laughed after that. The whole room went dead quiet. Corinne's smile faltered. Her father stopped mid-chew. I walked out of the dining room, grabbed my jacket, and left. I drove to the parking lot of a closed hardware store 3 miles away and sat in my truck for an hour, staring at nothing. The dashboard clock ticked forward while I replayed the moment in my head. The way she'd stood up with that glass raised, the look in her eyes, the laughter that had rippled through the room, my own daughters joining in like I was the setup to a joke they'd been waiting for. I thought about going back, thought about walking in there and demanding an explanation. But that's not who I am. I don't blow up. I plan. I execute. And I was starting to realize this situation was going to require a lot more planning than a holiday argument could fix. At 11:40 p.m., I called my attorney and left a voicemail. I want to know my option. Call me tomorrow. Then I drove to my buddy Ronan's place because I couldn't stomach the thought of going back to that house. Not tonight. He didn't ask questions when I showed up close to midnight. Just handed me a pillow and pointed to the couch. Guest room's got boxes in it. You'll have to rough it. I've been roughing it for a while now. This is an upgrade. He snorted. Get some sleep. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow. I lay there in the dark, not sleeping, just thinking. About the past year. About how I'd gotten here. About how the woman I'd been married to for 21 years had just publicly declared me her biggest regret. Something was very wrong with my marriage. I'd known it for months. But until that moment, I hadn't been ready to face the truth. Let me back up and tell you about the year leading up to that Thanksgiving. Because Corinne's little speech didn't come out of nowhere. Corinne and I met in our early 20s at a friend's wedding. We dated for 3 years, got married, had 2 daughters. Hannah came first, then Ellie 3 years later. For most of our marriage, things were solid. Not perfect, but functional. We were a team. Then Corinne turned 43, and something shifted. She announced one day that she'd been playing it safe her whole life and needed to start living authentically. I thought she meant pottery or book clubs. Instead, she came home with a $300 haircut that looked like it belonged on someone 15 years younger. What do you think? She asked, twirling in the kitchen. You look like you're auditioning for MILF Manor. She didn't laugh. That became a pattern. I'd make a joke, she'd snap back like I'd personally attacked her. The spending got out of control. She bought a ring light for her bathroom mirror. A ring light, like she was about to launch a beauty empire from our master bath. She joined a gym and became obsessed. 5, 6 times a week. Started posting selfies with captions about glow-ups and becoming my best self. Her phone became an extension of her hand. Always checking it. Always smiling at something on the screen. When I mentioned she was at the gym more than she was home, she told me maybe she needed space from someone who criticizes everything. I'm not criticizing, I said. I'm observing that my wife has been replaced by someone who thinks drinking matcha is a personality trait. She grabbed her gym bag and left. Didn't come home until after midnight. Said she'd grabbed food with gym friends afterward. The distance grew. Conversations became transactions. Date nights became extinct. I brought it up one night in September. Told her something was wrong with us. Maybe being here doesn't feel like enough anymore, she said. That one stung. I told myself it was a midlife crisis. that she'd work through it. Meanwhile, our daughter Hannah had become Corinne's shadow. At 19, she was at a state school 2 hours away, but she was home constantly, not to see me, to hang out with her mother like they were sorority sisters. Trading looks across the dinner table like they had inside jokes I wasn't part of. Ellie, my 16-year-old, was the opposite. Quiet, watchful. By the time Thanksgiving rolled around, I was exhausted, but I didn't know the half of it. Not yet. The week after Thanksgiving was brutal. I stayed at Ronan's place for 3 nights while I figured out my next move. Went back to the house only when I knew Corinne was at work, grabbed clothes and essentials, left before anyone could corner me for a conversation. Corinne's attempts to reach out were predictable. Texts ranging from angry to pleading to accusatory. Voicemails that started with, "You're being ridiculous," and ended with, "We need to talk about this like adults." I didn't respond to any of them, because here's the thing. Her comment was cruel, but it wasn't random. Something had been feeding her contempt for months. Ellie named it for me. She showed up at Ronan's place the Sunday after Thanksgiving, drove herself over. Ronan let her in, then conveniently disappeared to run errands. She sat across from me at his kitchen table, looking like someone carrying a weight she was finally ready to put down. "Dad, I need to tell you something, and you're not going to like it. Go ahead. Mom's been seeing someone. For months." The words hit me like a physical blow, but somewhere beneath the shock there was recognition, like a puzzle piece I'd been avoiding finally snapping into place. "How do you know?" "I've seen things, heard things. She's not careful when she thinks no one's paying attention." Ellie's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. "His name is Tanner. He's a trainer at her gym. He's like 28. 28. My wife was 43, and she was sneaking around with a guy who probably still had a poster of a sports car on his bedroom wall." "How long?" "Since at least the summer. Maybe longer." I saw a text on her phone in July. She left it on the counter and it lit up. I wasn't snooping, I just saw it. His name with a heart emoji. That's when I started paying attention. "Does Hannah know?" Ellie nodded slowly. "She's been covering for Mom, making up stories about where she is when you ask. They think it's funny, like some kind of girls' club secret." That hit harder than the affair itself. My own daughter, actively helping her mother betray me, treating it like a game. "Why are you telling me now?" "Because what she said at Thanksgiving was disgusting. Everyone just sat there laughing like it was normal, like you deserved it." She wiped her eyes. "And because you deserve to know the truth. I've been carrying this for months and it's been eating me alive." I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Thank you for telling me. Hannah thinks I'm being dramatic. She told me to mind my own business when I said something to her about it. Said Mom deserves to be happy and I should stay out of it." Ellie shook her head. "Like you're just furniture." That word stuck with me. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "I don't know yet, but I'm going to need you to keep this between us for now. Can you do that?" She nodded. "Yeah, I can do that." After she left, I sat in Ronan's kitchen for a long time, processing. Then I called my attorney back and asked him a very specific question. "We're in an at-fault divorce state, right?" "We are." "Why?" "Because some things changed." The next 6 weeks were preparations. I moved back into the house because Ronan told me straight up that abandoning the marital home before filing is one of the dumbest moves a guy can make. He'd been through his own divorce 5 years back, knew how the game worked. "The house is half yours," he said. "Don't let anyone run you out of it." That advice was about to pay off. Corinne was shocked when I returned, then relieved, then suspicious. She tried to act like nothing had happened, like Thanksgiving was just a misunderstanding, and her comment was taken out of context. She suggested we go to counseling, proposed a weekend getaway to reconnect. She was suddenly attentive, suddenly interested in how my day was, suddenly willing to watch football with me like we used to. I played along just enough to keep her comfortable, responded to her questions with neutral answers, accepted her sudden attention without reciprocating too eagerly, let her think she was winning me back. Every night after she went to sleep, I went through our finances with a fine-tooth comb. What I found was ugly. Corinne had drained almost $18,000 from various accounts over the past year. Cash withdrawals that didn't match any purchases I knew about. Credit card charges for restaurants I'd never been to, in towns I'd never visited with her. Hotel charges, 4 different hotels over 8 months, all during times she'd claimed to be at work events or girls' weekends. I documented everything. Screenshots of every bank statement going back 2 years. Credit card receipts with dates, locations, and amounts. A timeline of her claimed whereabouts cross-referenced with the hotel charges. I even pulled our phone records to see the call and text patterns. The discrepancies were damning. On a night she'd told me she was at her friend Karen's house for a birthday dinner, there was a charge at a Marriott 40 miles away. On a weekend, she'd supposedly gone to a wellness retreat with her sister. There were 2 nights at a boutique hotel downtown. Her sister, I later confirmed through Ellie, had been home with the flu that entire weekend. There was even a charge at a restaurant we used to go to for our anniversary. That one stung more than I expected. I made copies of every important financial document in the house. Mortgage papers showing I'd made the $42,000 down payment with inheritance money from my grandparents, fully documented and traceable. Insurance policies, tax returns going back 7 years, vehicle titles, everything that established what was mine, what was hers, and what was ours. Ronan helped me organize everything. We'd meet at his place twice a week, spreading documents across his dining room table. He knew which details mattered and which ones would just make me look petty in front of a judge. "This is comprehensive," he said one night, flipping through the timeline I'd created. "She's not going to have a leg to stand on." That's the idea. I also reached out to my buddy Carver, who worked in property management, asked if he could dig up anything on this Tanner guy through his contacts. Turned out the guy was a financial disaster, evicted from his last apartment for missed rent, behind on payments at his current place. His car was leased, and he'd missed those payments too. The Instagram lifestyle was pure fantasy, funded by whatever he could charm out of lonely women at the gym. "Your wife's basically been his ATM," Carver told me. "Based on what you've found, she's probably dropped 10, 12 grand on this guy over the past year. Clothes, dinners, his phone bill, maybe even some of his rent. I found the receipts for that too. Designer sneakers, a watch that cost more than my first car, gym clothes with price tags that made my eyes water, all charged to our joint card while I thought she was buying groceries and getting her hair done. So she threw away our marriage for a broke fitness influencer who couldn't pay his own bills." The irony was thick enough to choke on. My attorney Pollock walked me through the legal implications. In our state, adultery was grounds for at-fault divorce, which could strengthen my position on asset division and spousal support. But I needed proof, something that would hold up if we went to trial. "Witness testimony is good," Pollock said, "but physical evidence is better. Messages, receipts, anything that shows the affair happened and that marital funds were used to support it." Working on it, I got what I needed in mid-December. Corinne had gotten sloppy, comfortable in the belief that I was oblivious. She'd left her tablet on the kitchen counter while she showered, and her messages were synced to it. I had maybe 5 minutes. I took photos of everything I could find. Months of conversations with Tanner, pet names, explicit messages I skimmed past as fast as possible because I didn't need those images in my head. Plans to meet up at hotels, at his apartment, at the gym after hours. And the gold mine, a conversation from November where she complained about having to perform at Thanksgiving dinner and how she was so done pretending to care about her marriage. She'd written, "I'm thinking of saying something to make him finally get the message." Tanner had responded with a laughing emoji, and savage, she'd planned it. She'd orchestrated my public humiliation as some kind of twisted message that our marriage was over. I had everything I needed. I shared everything with Pollock. He practically rubbed his hands together. "This is exactly what we need." I served Corinne the divorce papers on January 3rd, 2 days after New Year's, waited until Hannah had gone back to school, and it was just Corinne and Ellie in the house. Ellie knew it was coming. I'd warned her the night before so she wouldn't be blindsided. The process server arrived at 9 a.m. while I was conveniently at Ronan's place. I got a text from Ellie 20 minutes later. "It's done," she's screaming. Corinne called me 14 times that day. I answered on the 15th. "Are you out of your mind?" she screamed. "You're divorcing me? Over one comment at dinner? Read the filing, Corinne. It's not about the comment. What the hell is that supposed to mean? It means I know about Tanner. I know about the hotels. I know about the messages. I know about every dollar you spent on him from our accounts." Silence. Dead silence that stretched for 5 seconds, then 10. "You went through my private..." I went through our financial records looking for discrepancies. What I found was evidence of adultery and financial misconduct, both of which matter quite a bit in our state, which, as I'm sure your attorney will explain, is exactly where we live. Her voice dropped, smaller now. "Isaac, we can talk about this. We can work through it. I made a mistake. You made a choice, repeatedly, for months, while using our daughter to cover for you and while spending our money to fund it. Those are decisions. Please, just let me explain." "I don't need an explanation. My attorney will be in touch." I hung up, turned off my phone, and went to help Ronan fix a fence in his backyard because I needed to do something physical with my hands before I put them through a wall. The next few days were chaos. Corinne hired an attorney. Her initial response was predictably aggressive. She wanted the house. She wanted spousal support. She wanted me painted as an emotionally distant husband who'd driven her to seek comfort elsewhere. Pollock responded with our evidence package, copies of the messages, including the one where she discussed humiliating me at Thanksgiving. The hotel receipts matching dates she'd claimed to be elsewhere. The financial trail showing exactly how much of our money she'd funneled to her boyfriend. The inheritance documentation proving the house down payment was mine. Her attorney called back 3 days later with a very different tone. Pollock said the guy sounded tired, like he'd spent hours explaining to Corinne why her dream settlement wasn't happening, and she'd fought him every step of the way. Attorneys hate clients who won't listen. Makes his job easier when they finally do. Hannah inserted herself into the situation immediately. She called me the day after Corinne got served, ranting about how I was destroying the family and punishing Mom for being human. How could I do this to her? How could I be so cold? Didn't I care about what this would do to everyone? I let her talk herself out, didn't interrupt, didn't defend myself, just let her dump all her righteous anger into the phone until she ran out of steam. Then I asked one question. How long have you known? Silence. Long, uncomfortable silence. Ellie told me you've been covering for her since the summer, making up stories about where she was, treating it like some kind of fun secret between you two. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? Explain it to me. Explain how my daughter helped her mother cheat on her father and thought it was entertaining. She didn't have an answer. Just stammered something about how I wouldn't understand and hung up. 2 days later, she posted on social media about toxic family members and cutting out negativity. Got 63 likes. Her mother was one of them. I understood plenty. I understood that my older daughter had chosen her side long ago, and it wasn't mine. The divorce negotiations lasted about 6 weeks. Corinne started aggressive and ended compliant, which is what happens when the evidence is overwhelming, and your attorney keeps telling you that a trial will expose everything to public record. Her initial demands were laughable. She wanted the house. She wanted 60% of assets. She wanted $1,500 a month in spousal support for 5 years. She wanted me to continue paying Hannah's tuition as part of the settlement. Every time Corinne pushed for something unreasonable, Pollock would counter with a reminder that a trial would make everything public. The affair, the financial misconduct, the messages. Her family would know. Her friends would know. Her co-workers would know. She didn't want that. She didn't want Tanner's name in court document. Didn't want her sister and parents reading transcripts of her sexting a personal trainer 15 years younger. That fear gave me leverage, and I used every ounce of it. I kept the house. Non-negotiable. The $42,000 down payment was my inheritance, fully documented, and Pollock made clear we'd fight to the death on that point. She got a settlement of $55,000 from our joint assets, which was less than half but more than she deserved, given she'd blown 18 grand on her affair. We split retirement accounts down the middle because fighting over them would cost more in legal fees than it was worth. No spousal support. The documented adultery and financial misconduct gave Pollock serious leverage on that front. According to him, she cried in her attorney's office when they explained how much the evidence weakened her position. In our state, proof of an affair doesn't automatically kill spousal support, but it sure doesn't help your case. Combined with the money she'd funneled to Tanner, her attorney basically told her to take what she could get. Custody was straightforward. Ellie was 16 and explicitly chose to stay with me. She wrote a statement for the court explaining her preference, and the judge respected it without question. Corinne got visitation rights that Ellie declined to use. I didn't push her either way. The divorce was finalized in late February. I signed the papers in Pollock's office on a cold Tuesday morning. $8,000 in legal fees, worth every single cent. But I wasn't done. Not quite. See, Hannah thought she could take her mother's side, help cover an affair, laugh at my public humiliation, call me selfish and cruel, and still enjoy the benefits of having a father who paid for things. That's not how consequences work. Not in my world. I still had access to her student account through the parent portal. She'd never bothered to remove me. Her grades were a disaster. 2 classes she was clearly going to fail. A third she'd apparently stopped attending entirely. Meanwhile, the tuition bills kept coming to my email like clockwork. She was tanking her semester while I footed the bill, and she hadn't told anyone. Just kept accepting the money and pretending everything was fine. I also knew about the credit card, the one Corinne had opened in my name without authorization and given to Hannah for emergencies. Forged my signature on the application. I'd found it during my financial review. $3,000 in charges over 6 months. Clothes, restaurants, concert tickets, $200 at a spa, $300 at a jewelry store. Not a single legitimate emergency in the bunch. The week after the divorce finalized, I made 3 moves. First, I canceled my tuition payment plan for the spring semester, $12,000 that was now entirely her problem. Second, on my attorney's advice, I froze the credit card and formally disputed the unauthorized charges. Pollock helped me draft a letter to the card company, documenting that the account was opened without my consent. Corinne would have to sort out the balance herself. Third, I stopped all automatic payments to accounts connected to Hannah's education. If she wanted to continue school, she could figure out how to fund it. I also dealt with Tanner, though that was more about closure than revenge. I drove to the gym where he'd transferred one afternoon. He'd moved to a different location after word started spreading about the affair at his old one. Probably thought a fresh start would help. I waited in the parking lot until I saw him come out, heading toward that silver Nissan with the "Good Vibes Only" bumper sticker. Walked over casually and leaned against his car. "Can I help you?" he asked, clearly not recognizing me. "Tanner, right?" "Yeah, who's asking?" "Isaac, Corinne's husband." I let that land, watching his face carefully. "Well, ex-husband now, technically. Thanks to you." The recognition hit him like a truck. His face went pale, then red, then pale again. He took a step back like he was thinking about running. His hands started shaking. All that gym time, all those muscles, and the guy looked like he was about to faint at the sight of a middle-aged fleet manager. "Relax," I said, keeping my voice friendly. "I'm not here to cause problems. Actually, I wanted to thank you." "Thank me?" His voice cracked. "Absolutely. See, your little affair saved me probably $50,000 in the settlement. So genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being so careless with your messages." He didn't know what to say, just stood there looking sick. "Look, man, I didn't know." "Sure you did." I was enjoying watching him squirm. I pushed off from his car and straightened my jacket. "One more thing. You might want to start thinking about your next move." Small communities talk, and Corinne's social circle was pretty well connected. Once word gets around about the trainer who breaks up marriages, your client list might get a little shorter. I walked away without looking back. Didn't need to. Last I heard through Carver, Tanner switched to doing private training out of clients' homes. Quieter that way. No coworkers asking questions, no gym gossip to worry about. Whether that was because of our little chat or because word had already started spreading, I don't know. Don't really care either. Carver also mentioned Tanner had to move back in with his parents 2 months after the divorce finalized. The Instagram posts got a lot less frequent after that. Corinne tried to keep the relationship going for a while, but he went cold on her pretty quick once the divorce was final and the money stopped flowing. Blocked her number eventually, ghosted her completely. The fantasy wasn't so fun without the funding. Things fell apart for them pretty fast after that. Corinne's first apartment was rough, 2 bedrooms in a complex on the wrong side of town. She complained about the neighbors, about the noise, about the water pressure, about everything except the choices that had landed her there. Without my income stabilizing things, reality hit fast. The credit cards that had funded her authentic life maxed out within 2 months. The gym membership got canceled when the payment bounced. She had to trade in the SUV for a used Corolla because the payments were eating her alive. The expensive skincare, the designer clothes, the ring light for her bathroom mirror that was supposed to launch her influencer career. All of it had to go when rent came due. Her social circle dried up. Word got around about the affair, as it always does. Nobody wanted to be associated with the woman who'd cheated on her husband with a trainer half her age and got caught with receipts. Even her sister Vivian eventually admitted to Ellie that she'd lost respect for Corinne long before Thanksgiving, but hadn't known how to say anything. The midlife crisis that had started all of this crashed hard. Without the excitement of the affair, without the money to keep up appearances, without the husband at home handling everything she didn't want to deal with, Corinne was forced to confront the reality of what she'd thrown away. Last I heard, she'd started going to church and posting about spiritual journeys. Make of that what you will. Hannah's situation unfolded exactly as I'd predicted. Without my tuition payments, she had to scramble for emergency loans mid-semester. The interest rates were brutal. The stress was overwhelming. The credit card dispute meant Corinne had to cover the $3,000 in charges herself, which put her further in the hole financially. When grades came out, Hannah ended up on academic probation anyway. All those nights partying instead of studying, all those classes she'd skipped, all that money I'd invested in her future. Wasted. One of her professors emailed me directly, not knowing about the divorce, asking if everything was okay at home because Hannah had missed the final exam entirely. I didn't respond. She dropped out at the end of spring semester, moved back in with Corinne into that cramped apartment, got a job at a clothing store in the mall, making barely above minimum wage. Through Ellie, I heard about the fights, constant arguments between Corinne and Hannah about money, about space, about whose fault everything was. Who forgot to pay which bill? Who ate whose leftovers? Who was supposed to take out the trash? Apparently, they'd turned on each other pretty quick once there was no common enemy to unite against. Funny how that works. The same mother-daughter team that had conspired against me couldn't survive 6 months of actually having to deal with each other's company. Turns out it's easy to be partners in crime when someone else is paying for everything. Less fun when you're fighting over who gets the last roll of toilet paper. Meanwhile, My life actually got better, just quieter, easier. The constant background stress I'd been carrying for years was gone, and I hadn't even realized how heavy it was until I put it down. I refinished the deck myself that spring, spent weekends sanding and staining until it looked brand new. There's something satisfying about working with your hands on something you can actually see improve. No office politics, no spreadsheets, just wood and sandpaper and the smell of fresh stain. Reorganize the garage into something functional instead of a dumping ground. Corinne had always filled it with random junk she swore she'd deal with eventually. Boxes of clothes she never wore, exercise equipment she used twice, holiday decorations for parties we stopped throwing years ago. I got a dumpster, spent a weekend clearing it all out, and built proper shelving. Hung my tools where I could actually find them. Made a space that was mine. Started fishing again on Saturday mornings, something I'd abandoned years ago because Corinne thought it was a waste of time. Turns out sitting by a lake at 6 a.m., watching the fog lift off the water, not talking to anyone, was exactly what I needed. Just me and the fish and the quiet. Ellie and I developed a routine. Sunday morning breakfasts, movie nights on weekdays when she didn't have homework. I taught her how to change a tire, how to check her oil, how to jump a battery. Basic stuff. She made honor roll that semester for the first time since middle school. Started dating a nice kid from her chemistry class named Tommy, who seemed appropriately terrified of me when I answered the door. Good handshake, though. Looked me in the eye. That counts for something. She told me one night she felt like she could finally breathe in the house. Ronan and I were closer than ever. Weekly lunches at our usual diner turned into a ritual I actually looked forward to. Monthly poker games with some other guys from work became a fixture. Carver became a genuine friend. My circle was smaller but stronger. The people in it actually had my back. And then, in early May, Hannah showed up. I was in the garage working on an old radio I'd been restoring, a 1960s Zenith I'd found at an estate sale. I heard a car pull into the driveway and looked up to see her climbing out of the used Civic Corinne had bought her after the divorce. She looked rough, thinner than I remembered, and not in a healthy way. The confident, bratty girl who'd cackled at my humiliation 6 months ago was gone. In her place was someone who looked like life had been teaching her some hard lessons. Dad, her voice cracked on the word. Can we talk? I set down my tools and leaned against the workbench. Didn't move toward her. Didn't invite her in. Things are really bad, she said, and the tears started immediately. Mom's apartment is awful. She can't pay her bills. The landlord is threatening eviction if we're late again. I had to drop out because we couldn't afford it, and now I'm stuck working at the mall making barely anything. My car needs repairs we can't afford. Everything is falling apart. I let her talk. Let her get it all out. The realization that the comfortable lifestyle she'd taken for granted her entire life had vanished overnight. She talked for 5 minutes straight, crying, waiting for me to step in and fix things like I'd always fix things. When she finally stopped, I let the silence hang for a long moment. Then I spoke, keeping my voice calm and even. You helped her lie to me for months. You covered for her affair like it was a game, like your father's marriage was entertainment. You laughed when she publicly humiliated me in front of our entire family. And then you called me selfish and cruel for refusing to keep funding your life after all of that. I know I made mistakes. You made choices. I cut her off. Every single day you chose to help her betray me, you made a choice. Every time you lied about where she was. Every time you traded little looks with her at the dinner table like you were both in on some secret. When you sat at that Thanksgiving table and laughed at me. Now you're living with the consequences of those choices. That's how life works. But I'm your daughter. Yes, you are. And I love you. But love doesn't mean I'm required to rescue you from a situation you helped create. Love doesn't mean there are no consequences for betrayal. She was crying harder now, tears streaming down her face. So you're just going to let us struggle? You're just going to watch us fall apart? I'm going to let you figure it out. You're 19 years old. You made adult choices. Now you get to handle adult consequences. I picked up my tools and turned back to the workbench. If you want a relationship with me going forward, you're going to have to earn it. Not with tears, not with guilt trips, not by showing up when you need money, with actions. Consistent, sustained actions that show me you actually understand what you did and why it was wrong. And if I can't, then that's your answer. I looked at her over my shoulder, meeting her eyes directly. Figure it out, Hannah. Time to grow up. She stood there for a long moment, waiting for me to soften. I didn't. I went back to working on my radio. Eventually, I heard her car start. Heard the engine fade down the street until it was gone. Ellie found me in the garage an hour later. She'd heard the whole thing through the window. You okay? Yeah, I'm okay. That was hard to listen to. It was hard to say. I set down the soldering iron and looked at her. But it was true. She pulled up a stool and sat down across from me. I thought she'd at least apologize, not just show up crying about money. People apologize when they feel guilty about what they did. She showed up because she's feeling the consequences of what she did. You think she'll ever actually get it? Maybe, maybe not. Some people never do. Ellie was quiet for a moment. I feel bad for her sometimes. I know she did this to herself, but she's still my sister. Feeling bad for someone doesn't mean you have to save them from themselves. She nodded. For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. She hugged me then, long and tight. When she pulled back, her eyes were wet, but she was smiling. I'm proud of you, Dad. Thanks, kiddo. I'm proud of you too. That night, I sat on the deck I'd refinished myself, watching the sun go down. The house was quiet, peaceful, mental. My wife called me her greatest regret in front of everyone we knew. Turns out she did me a favor. I'm nobody's regret, and I'm definitely nobody's punchline. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.